I'm Vice President of Marketing at eFolder and your host for today's event. Welcome to the eFolder Expert Series. This webinar series brings together experts from eFolder's staff and partner community for deep dive discussions on key service and technical topics. The topic for today, Cloud Virtualization, 3 Myths of Cloud Recovery Revealed. Today we are joined by Dave Watts, President and CEO of NetFusion. In just a moment, I will further introduce Dave. Before we go through the agenda, let's cover a few housekeeping items. Today's session is being recorded. The recorded version of the webinar will be made available to eFolder's YouTube channel. We will also make copies of the slides available to those that attended the event. With over 150 people registered for today's session, we have put all participants in listen-only mode. You can enjoy the audio portion of today's event by either streaming it to your computer or dialing in over the phone. The questions are strongly encouraged throughout today's session. We've planned a special Q&A section at the end of today's discussion, but you may submit as we go along, and we will try to address your questions on the fly. Dave is going to first give a brief overview of cloud recovery. Next, he will describe some of the common misconceptions many partners have about cloud recovery. And next, Dave will introduce eFolder Continuity Cloud and talk about his experience with his soon-to-be-announced eFolder service offering. Now let me introduce today's expert. Dave Watts is President and CEO of NetFusion, an MSP with offices in Los Angeles and San Francisco. Dave started the company in 1995. Today, he spends most of his days in front of new clients or consulting on the strategic needs of existing clients. Dave's focus is sales and new business development. He knows the challenges all partners face in winning new revenue. Like many of you, however, Dave is also technical and got his start as a network administrator for a Fortune 500 insurance company. Dave will be joined for today's discussion by one of his lead technicians, Kent Tepper. Welcome to Dave and Kent.
Thank you, Ted.
Hey, good morning. It's Kent.
Okay, Dave, I'll give you control of the keyboard and mouse here.
Okay. First of all, before we actually go into, obviously we're here to discuss cloud recovery with eFolder, let's talk a little bit about why it's important to have cloud recovery. When you talk to a prospect, a business owner, one of the things you want to talk about with an eFolder BDR solution, you've got a situation where, obviously you've got an on-site BDR. If an individual server fails, you can spin up a server, virtualize it, and you're on your way and everything chugs along great. And we call that, the way I sell it, we call that business continuity. Now, with a disaster recovery, though, you've got a different situation, and that's where all the servers are unavailable. There's probably only 2 situations where that could occur. One is all your servers are stolen, which is probably unlikely. But in that unlikely event, you could ship out a new BDR from eFolder and have it shipped to your client's office, put it in, virtualize all their servers, and be up and running while you order replacement servers, et cetera. However, what's much more likely is in a disaster where I live in Los Angeles, so for us, we always talk about earthquakes. So if we have an earthquake, then your office is going to be unavailable, and often the building gets condemned or whatever. But if you're someplace in the Midwest, you might have a tornado or something, but it could be something more common like a flood or sprinkler system, whatever. For whatever reason, your site is unusable. If your site's unusable, what are your options? Shipping out a new BDR is great, but where do you put it? You've got to have a site ready with the bandwidth and connectivity necessary and the firewall configurations in place so that you can connect either the original office that is now unavailable and or their branch offices. So this is where cloud recovery becomes a really key piece of this disaster recovery equation. So I want to talk specifically a little bit about cloud recovery. So if you're looking at the slide here, you've got your production servers, you've got your eFolder BDR, you're taking backups, and now it goes to the eFolder storage cloud. And that's where right now all your BDRs, and that's the way it's working with eFolder for those of you familiar with eFolder services. But if we want to, excuse me, let me see if I can change my slide here. Just a second. Ted, do I have, I'm not able to change the slide.
Here, let me see if I can.
Oh, now I think I can, okay.
Yeah.
I went too far. There we go. Did I just skip one? Or did I? That was good. Okay. Well, impressive when the technician can't do the slideshow. Anyway, so cloud recovery. Now, if we add to this, right now, what eFolder has added is to their storage cloud is this continuity cloud. This is a huge, huge improvement. So right now, you've got production servers, your BDR appliance, you're taking backup images, and then those ship out to the eFolder storage cloud. That's what all of us have that are currently with eFolder. Now, with disaster recovery options, you can either, right, as I said a moment ago, you can either download or ship out disks and or ship out another BDR to put them on so that you can virtualize while you get your servers replaced. But it still begs the question, where am I going to put this new BDR that's going to virtualize all of my servers so that I have a way for all my users to connect to them? Remember, your users at this point would most likely be working from home, but people in branch offices are still going to need to connect to the main site. And so you need to be an easy way to be able to do this. With the eFolder Continuity Cloud, you have the ability to, in the cloud, on an emergency basis, virtualize any server that's currently stored up in the eFolder storage cloud. And that's going to be on demand. So at the time of disaster, what that means is you're going to be able to offer your client, or previously the client, if his site was destroyed, he or she would be responsible for finding a new site to house this BDR where you're going to virtualize everything and then try to connect to it. That's a daunting task for a business owner. They don't usually, putting it at someone's home is usually pretty lame. They're not going to have the bandwidth or the firewall set up, and they're also not going to have, business class internet services where there's SLAs, et cetera. So what this does is, instead, eFolder can spin up your, you contact eFolder, you're going to be able to spin up your servers in the cloud with eFolder on demand. It's a process where they copy and decrypt, so it's not instantaneous, but it is very quick so that you, in most cases, can have everything back up and running in less than 24 hours easily. What is really nice about this is, let me see if there's anything else I wanted to add to this. Just one second. Okay, I think that's all I wanted to cover on this slide. So there's a few myths, though, with my slide changing. Ted, the problem I have is when I'm dropping my mouse down and to move it, it's bringing up your bar.
I would just click on the slide and then use the down arrow, or if you just click on the slide, it'll advance. Okay, perfect. Sorry about that. All right, so let's talk about myths associated, though, with cloud recovery. Cloud recovery is expensive, all right? If you go out and try to set up a cloud environment you're on your own, and with either Amazon, Rackspace, or GoGrid, or somebody else, you're going to have that on all the time, and you're going to have it ready. Now, if you use some of the competitor solutions, you're going to see that there's additional costs, and you're paying more up front. We'll talk some more about that in a minute. A second myth is cloud recovery requires a large upfront financial commitment. So if you were going out and doing this on your own, it would require a large upfront financial commitment, and in fact an ongoing one also, not just upfront. Another myth, cloud recovery only allows simple network configurations. A lot of times you talk to a lot of vendors, and it's interesting, people will talk all about, yes, we can spin up your server in the cloud, yes, we can spin up your server in the cloud, but there's very little discussion about how your users are going to connect to these servers that are up in the cloud. That is a huge difference for you that I would really recommend that everybody pay attention to when they're looking at the cloud recovery solution, because that's what's going to separate, you from your competitors at the time of a disaster. Let's look at typical cloud recovery pricing. Interesting. So can you guys see that the 3 points on that, Ted, or not?
No, they animate. So you...
Oh, sorry about that. Okay. So large upfront cloud storage commitment. Let's talk about that. So if you go with some of the competitors for eFolder, to remain nameless, a lot of them will require you to make a very large upfront cloud storage commitment. If you're purchasing offsite storage from them, you're going to have to buy it in like terabyte sizes to get started. You're probably going to pay a higher per gigabyte price per month every day of the year. Why does that matter? Well, you're paying for it whether you use it or not. So if you never have a disaster, which of course would be fantastic, that means that you are paying a higher price per gigabit every single month or every day of the year, every single month, and that really is going to add up to a much more expensive cost. Let's talk a little bit about eFolder pricing. Okay, Continuity Cloud pricing. Everybody that is an existing eFolder partner understands that the BDR appliances range from approximately $1,600 to about $7,000. If you're not an eFolder partner, that's where they range. eFolder, one of the reasons I do like eFolder is they don't really mark up their BDR appliances, yet they provide good hardware and a solid, complete solution. With the BDR software license, you're paying about $575 per server if you pay for it up front, which, by the way, if you've ever shopped that and went out and bought that directly, it's much, much more than that. Or you're paying a fixed monthly price of $20 per server and $5 per desktop. For a lot of partners, that's really convenient so that you don't have to make a lot of upfront investment in when you set up a BDR, especially for a client that will have multiple servers. The BDR service itself, as you may or may not be familiar with, is $40 a month per BDR appliance. That includes 150 gigabytes of offsite storage, all right, per BDR. What's nice is with eFolder is that is not siloed with that BDR appliance. It is shared among all of your accounts. So if you've got someone that's using less than 150 and someone else that's using more than 150, and on average you're not using more than the total allotted for all of your BDRs, eFolder lets you benefit from that, and you don't have any additional costs in that way. Now your BDR additional storage is going to be a variable monthly price anywhere from 30 cents to 20 cents a gigabit per month, and that's going to be based on it's a volume quantity discount. The more you have with eFolder, just like with any other vendor, the cheaper the price you're going to get. Now that's the way it works currently with everything with the BDRs and and with the storage, offsite storage. Now the Continuity Cloud pricing, how much more monthly are you going to be paying for this in order to have this option? $0. Yes, that's what I said. That's not a typo. It's $0. There's no additional monthly price. There's nothing up front, and there's nothing variable monthly to pay for this. eFolder has taken the approach of they've made the additional investment at their cost so that to separate them from their competitors and to better serve their partners so that when you need the Continuity Cloud, it's available. You only pay for it at the time of a true disaster, and that's when you need it. Now, these are wholesale costs. I would not show these to your clients because you're going to, if you're reselling your service, which obviously you are, then you are going to want to mark this up because you're going to have some labor involved here also. So the Continuity Cloud comes in two sizes, medium and large. And when it's needed, those, by the way, the medium and large are going to differ by the number of cores and RAM and storage available, which I'm sure Ted could send out later if people need that. But the medium is 4 cores, 32 gigs of RAM, and 3 terabytes of logical storage. The large is 8 cores, 96 gigs of RAM, and 10 terabytes of storage. Both are RAID 10, so you're going to have something very fast and very redundant. So, sorry, back to the pricing though. The medium is only $150 a week with a minimum of 2 weeks. So $300 for 2 weeks of having all your servers virtualized in the cloud. If your client can get fits into the medium size, which I would think most would, but if you have a larger client, then you're going to want to go for large, and that's $450 a week, minimum of 2 weeks. I don't know if anyone out there has gone and priced this versus spinning something up with Amazon or Rackspace, et cetera. This is much less expensive than going out and getting dedicated servers with these other companies. So that's where we are on the Continuity Cloud pricing. Let's go on and talk a little bit about eFolder and why they're pricing the way they price their things, why that means something to you, why the difference means something to you. If you're paying less on a monthly basis and only paying for something when you need it, you're going to have greater agility in your pricing. That means you could, if you wanted to, charge an extra surcharge or raise your prices a little bit so that you're covering the cost of that, so that in the event of an emergency, you wouldn't have to pay for that. That's one way you could price it. And you wouldn't have to charge your client, excuse me. But you're going to have more options because you're not paying more, okay, on a regular basis to pay for this cloud offering. You're only going to pay for it when you need it. Some people might want to charge a lower price to their client to get in the door, and then put in their contracts they would charge something at the time of disaster. It's obviously a better value. If somebody offers you, eFolder is providing this, they're investing in this entire infrastructure, which is, very advanced at no additional cost to you until you need it, which is fantastic. And it's adaptable. We're going to talk some more about network configurations in a minute, and we're going to see how much more adaptable their solution is than some of the competitors. Let's talk a little bit about, the Continuity Cloud in detail. So if you can see the slide, on the left you've got your customer site. You've got a lot of computers, and it's either your customer site or your temporary site. If you've got like it could also be a branch office. So you've got computers connected on a LAN. You've got an IPsec firewall. Now, on the IPsec firewall, you can have an IPsec tunnel. So you can have a sonic wall or another firewall that you use, and it's going to go through the internet. You're going to have control of a private virtual firewall at eFolder. Right? This is a big difference. If you look at competitors, this is a really big difference. A lot of the competitors give you the ability to only do PPTP or RDP to the servers that are virtualized in the cloud. If you're doing PPTP only, and that's all they offer, then you're going to have a connection from each computer out to a firewall at the other end, or from each computer to a server. That's a lot of work for you to go around and reconfigure each PC. And it may not work the right way for all of your programs. Now, with an IPsec VPN, then it's going to act like it's just, another, you're going to be just like it's a branch office, or just like you're on the same subnet. You're going to be able to connect to this, to a virtual private firewall. You're going to have this continuity cloud compute node. It's powered by Hyper-V, VirtualBox, and Windows 2008 R2. It's their data center edition. And why does that data center edition matter to you? A data center edition of Windows, if you're not familiar with it, doesn't require that you have to do anything to the licensing to spin up your Windows server in that environment. So there's no calling Microsoft and saying, oh, now my machine's not going to spin up because of a licensing problem because I had OEM software and now it's on a different machine. That does not come up when you're using Data Center Edition. So I think that's eFolder has really built this really well. There's a lot of key differences, but they're specific, and it's important to pay attention to the details. So it's going to spin up at the Data Center Edition. You're going to spin up all your servers there. They're talking to a high-performance private storage cloud, which is where all your data is. All right? It's going to go back through the internet, and you're going to be able to talk back and forth from either this customer site, temporary site, people working from their homes. You've got multiple options, either a hardware IPsec tunnel. You can do a software IPsec tunnel also. If you've got people working from home with SonicWall VPN clients or other VPN clients, you can do a PPTP tunnel if you don't have that kind of IPsec client on a user machine. You can also do a VPN pass-through where you actually pass through and go directly to a server on the other side. So this is very flexible, and you can do one or more of these concurrently. You're not stuck with, I have to choose this or I have to choose that. So you have a lot of flexibility to plan and to be able to connect your users in the time of a disaster to their continuity cloud. When we looked at evaluating eFolder versus other competitors, we found that some of the other competitors that love to talk about, we only virtualize something in the cloud, we don't have any on-site appliances, we don't virtualize anything on-site, they were very quick to point out we only virtualize everything in the cloud. What we found was they did not have the technical expertise on these kind of firewall and connection methods. So they didn't have an IPsec firewall that could connect to a virtual private firewall. so that if I have a temporary site or if I got a branch office, so I don't have to go around and touch every machine in order to get them to connect to these servers on the cloud. To us, that was a big differentiator. Let's talk a little bit about some partner use cases.
I guess, Dave, before we go on,
Sure.
a couple questions that came up. Jesse wants to know about the use of multiple public IPs, and is that possible? So can you talk a little bit about the flexibility?
I'm going to let Kent, who is has been doing all of our testing with this. Kent, can you answer that question for us?
Ted, and forgive me if I'm wrong, I believe a typical setup has, you have a WAN IP, and this is Kent, everyone. You have a WAN IP, which is basically assigned to your virtual firewall, and then have at least one other IP addresses. And I believe during the time of spin-up, when eFolder is bringing up the continuity cloud for you, you can request the number of IP addresses that you need. I'm not real certain as far as the maximum number, but you definitely can request multiple public IP addresses and use those IP addresses.
That's correct, yeah.
Okay. Do we have any additional questions on that?
Yeah, so a couple other questions that came in. Joe wants to know, is this available for Shadow Protect standalone plans? So the answer is yes. So, it's one of the deployment scenarios for very small clients that some eFolder partners are pursuing is, you have a client, they want the ability to you want to be able to image their servers, and you want to protect those in the cloud, and you want to be able to recover those in the cloud, but they may not have the budget or the interest in of doing on-site virtualization with the BDR appliance. And so the question is can you use the continuity cloud in those sorts of deployments? And the answer is yes. And then Jesse wanted to know, will the continuity cloud work with the eFolder Aperture cloud service as well? And the answer to that is yes as well. So basically, everything you send to the eFolder storage cloud, whether you're using eFolder BDR with Shadow Protect or the Shadow Protect standalone service or the eFolder Aperture cloud service or even eFolder file and folder backup, you can recover all of the images that you've backed up to our cloud environment in the continuity cloud. So the continuity cloud is designed to support all of our service offerings, whether you're restoring images or files, and it doesn't really matter whether you're using either Shadow Protect or Aperture. So I think those are the main questions I wanted to answer right away, and I'll turn it back over to Dave.
Okay. Let's talk about some partner use cases. So when you're out actually selling, let's see if I get it to the next slide. There we go. Okay. So there's different ways. I know that I'm in business development, so I'm out actually selling our eFolder service, our BDR service. We call it business continuity service. There's multiple ways that you could use this. You could either charge a premium SLA on BDR installs and charge a higher price if people want to have the cloud option, and you can make it like you either have it or you don't for a client offering. And obviously it's available to you either way, but you can choose to differentiate on that on the way you sell it, and it either includes it or not. Okay? If it does include it, then perhaps you include the first 2 weeks of the spin-up in the event of an emergency at no additional cost, and then anything beyond that, you would probably charge them if they are not replacing their servers fast enough, et cetera. That's one way you could do it. Some partners may choose not to charge anything more, but instead have in their contract an emergency cloud recovery service. You might charge $1,000 a week or whatever price you deem is appropriate for emergency as needed for cloud recovery for clients. That's probably the approach that we're going to take so that I don't have to raise my normal prices, but you could do it either way. You could also have quarterly or annual testing where you sell the service. You say, we're going to be putting all of your data up in the cloud. If you'd like us to do an annual test where we actually do try to spin everything up in the cloud, test connections, et cetera, you could charge for an annual, or some clients I guess might want it quarterly, an annual testing of an actual disaster scenario. I think that would be an easy thing, especially on an annual basis. I think that would be an easy thing to charge for, because that's going above and beyond just putting your data up there and telling them it's available and it could be spun up. You're actually going to do a true disaster recovery scenario where everything is connected, people try to connect from home, and you put them to the paces once a year. For a company that's really concerned with disaster recovery, I would think that they would be willing to pay for that.
Yeah, and I think
any questions on this? Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, just to kind of add to that. I mean, I think what we've seen is, some of the most successful eFolder partners are out there. One of the best practices they all recommend is periodically doing test recoveries on the actual BDR appliances themselves. But a way to kind of take that testing readiness to another level is to do periodic provisioning into the continuity cloud and test the recoverability. And I think one of the really important things to emphasize around spinning up the images in the continuity cloud is it's important to, one, test the recoverability of the images, right? So you're doing your due diligence to make sure that you can meet your really stringent SLAs and commitments to your clients. But just as importantly, in my view, it's an opportunity for you to train your staff. It's like doing a fire drill. If you only do it once every 5 years, you're going to forget what to do. But if you're doing it on a more regular basis, either once a year or quarterly, your staff is going to be ready for when a real disaster strikes. So it's all about kind of training and readiness and getting hands-on experience with how to use the software and how to configure things correctly and move forward. So
I'd like to add something to that too, and you might want to build in a little bit of extra. If knowing that you did this like once a quarter and you could do all your clients once a quarter, and maybe you only do each client every 6 months or once a year, it's up to you, but your staff is doing it quarterly. Maybe you're doing different clients at different quarters. But I think that one thing that I really like the idea of is by doing an actual disaster recovery test with the client and showing them how it works up in the cloud, you're taking what is kind of an intangible that they're paying for and making it tangible. And it's really, people buy disaster recovery because it's kind of like insurance. But how often do you get to really see insurance in use? And with insurance, I know you're probably like me, you get tired of paying for it. But if you could see once a year or every 6 months from the client's perspective, wow, this is really how this works. This is so cool. You're making an intangible into a tangible. I definitely think that's something you could raise your price a little bit to include. Or maybe you just build it into your pricing and therefore you include it and the client doesn't feel like they're being nickel or dimed.
Yeah, and I think there's a couple questions that came in. Let's see here. So, I'm trying to figure out how to pronounce your name. Prick says, should we charge the client extra for this annual testing as we will have a charge from eFolder? And the answer there is absolutely yes. I mean, I think what eFolder has tried to do with the way we price the continuity cloud is to make it so that you avoid the cost and complexity of having to go build this infrastructure on your own. You get a highly capable, highly scalable infrastructure that you're able to use on demand, but it doesn't come at any extra cost to you. But you do need to anticipate the potential expense that you will have to spin up the continuity cloud node if there is a disaster at one of your clients. And you need to anticipate the expense of having your staff get trained up and ready to use this sort of resource when needed, and the expense of using it to test. So yes, I mean, so the answer is this gives eFolder partners a tremendous new capability that you can then turn around and supply to your clients that you didn't have before. And so yes, you should charge more. You should charge more for some sort of premium service, and then this is just a cost of you doing business. Or alternatively, you can charge a one-time fee, when a disaster does occur and make really good gross margins, because what business wouldn't pay $1,000 a week to have their entire server infrastructure running in the cloud? Of course they would pay that to keep their business up and running. So you have multiple different options on how you price and package this to your clients. But absolutely, yes, you need to turn this into a revenue generator for your business?
I don't think they're mutually exclusive either, the more I think about it, because you could have I think quarterly is probably excessive for most clients. I don't think it's excessive for your firm to be doing quarterly testing so that you stay fresh with it, but you don't need to, you might not want to do every client quarterly. You might want to do them every 6 months or a year, but you could include in your service, I'm going to show you how we're going to spin up your servers, show that they're available up there, and you might want to show that to the client once a year without, you may or may not want to do, and maybe you do the connection to it, et cetera, and you build that into your pricing. So maybe you raise your pricing for a smaller client. You have the smaller node. It's $300 basically once a year. And you could, but remember, that's for 2 weeks worth. You're going to be able to spread that out among other clients too. But you could charge a little bit extra, mark that up, throw in a little bit of labor that you know is going to be involved with it. It still doesn't mark it up very much. And you could include in your service an annual test where you show them that you can spin up their servers and maybe connect 1 or 2 machines. I would still probably charge the emergency cloud recovery service at the time of a true emergency, because your insurance company in most cases is going to pay for that. I would mention that during the sale, and they're probably not going to be concerned with that. Just like Ted said, nobody's going to care about what they have to pay at the time their office is gone. So, right. You slice and dice it any way you want.
Right. So there's a lot of different flexibility, but you absolutely need to find ways to monetize this from your client base. So Craig asked a question, which kind of goes to the point Dave just made, though. Is the price to spin up a server per server or per partner? And, meaning, is it $150 a week per server, or is it for the whole partner? And it's for the partner. So you can, if you have 10 clients, if you have 10 client BDRs deployed, you can provision a Continuity Cloud node at eFolder, and it will cost your organization $300 for the 10 calendar days that it's up. So it's $150 a week, minimum of 2 weeks. So if it was for 3 weeks, it would be $450. If it was for 4 weeks, it would be $600. So, but it's not per server or per client or anything like that. It's for your organization, the eFolder partner. You're able to spin it up, and then you're able to do test recoveries for all of your clients during that 10-week window. Now, of course, you need to pull a tech off of normally billable work and have them focus on this, but that should be a part and parcel of a readiness plan that any partner would have to make sure that you're going to be fully ready to go when and if a disaster ever really strikes.
I'll add one thing too. We changed the way we sell this service a few years ago. We used to sell our BDR service separately from our regular service. We now bundle our BDR service in with our regular service. So the client, and we give them X amount of storage offsite. So the client doesn't see the individual price breakdown, and therefore it's easier to build in the things that they really need. One of the reasons we did that is we found that clients were cheap on things that were actually important and vice versa, not cheap on things that weren't important. So instead, we've designed our package so that it includes everything I know they're going to need that's important. And that's just one way to sell it. And if you're doing it that way and you change your price slightly when you present to a new client, it's going to be a very easy sale, and no one's going to have any line item to take apart.
Well, so Dave, I guess the follow-on question, though, about your managed service offering is, what does it include? So if it now includes, backup and disaster recovery, I mean, what is kind of like your typical client managed service offering? What is it? What parts of their IT infrastructure and service does it include? With
relation to backup and disaster recovery, or period?
Well, just everything. I mean, I guess what is the standard?
We include everything I know that all of our tool set, everything I know that we need to support every desktop and every server, and that includes, we've even include antivirus now and the right spyware package, and we do it whether they use it or not, it's included. And the reason we do that is because we want to have, by having a standard that we implement at every client, we don't have to learn 10 different antivirus systems or 10 different systems for doing anything. So we can respond faster. It's a win-win for the client, and therefore they also don't feel like they're getting nickel and dime. So we include antivirus. We actually also include web filtering, web protection. We include our 24/7 phone support. We include on-site emergencies for servers if they also have the BDR in the plan, but we don't sell it without it anymore. We also would, so obviously we were going to include X amount of storage. We usually, when we sell somebody, start it with enough to get them to cover all their existing servers with a little bit of room to grow, and that way they don't see an increase for a while. And then trying to think of anything else. Can you think of anything else major I'm leaving out that's in our offering that we've standardized for everybody?
Remote monitoring tools as well, and patching tools as well on each desktop.
Oh, we also provide remote access to our clients to their own machines too.
So really, in your view, like BDR is just as important as kind of desktop antivirus and content filtering and that sort of thing in a complete managed service package today. And
oh, definitely. To me, the BDR and a disaster recovery plan is equally. We separate out the terms business continuity from disaster recovery. Business continuity to us is what happens when a server fails on site. It's just the way we define it, so that you're up and running as quickly as possible. So that's why we want to have an on-site BDR versus competitors to eFolder that don't do the BDRs and just do the off-site. And then we also want the off-site for a true disaster recovery. Now, I find that equally as important as them having their servers up and running all the time. It's equally as important.
Right. So let's kind of change gears a little bit and just ask Ken a few questions. I mean, we were very pleased to have NetFusion as a very active beta tester of the Continuity Cloud over the past couple of weeks. Can you kind of describe how your experience of putting the Continuity Cloud through its paces?
Sure. Actually, what the process looks like, and I'll simplify this, and if there's any questions, please let me know, guys. When a Continuity Cloud is provisioned for you, you'll pretty much have remote desktop access to that server as soon as it's provisioned. You get an IP address, login information, so you'll connect to that Continuity Cloud server via remote desktop. And then what you'll do is you'll fire up the eFolder software, and you can log in as, say you were doing testing for multiple clients. You could log in as each of your clients if you wanted to. And actually, really, my point is you'll have access to all of your client information. So you'll log in, basically to their setup, see their servers, and then can download. Basically what you're doing is you're decrypting that information, and that's really why one of the many reasons why we like the eFolder solution is those shadow protected. I'm referring to shadow protect in this conversation. Those images are going up to the cloud encrypted, and they remain encrypted in the cloud. So we sell security to our clients like crazy. Those images are not sitting up there unencrypted. So when you're actually recovering them, you go through a decryption process, to really just download that information to the Continuity Cloud server, and then we'll go through the exact same process that you go through on an on-site BDR, using virtual boot and VirtualBox to virtualize those servers. Then also you have access to a virtual firewall. You can set up IPsec tunnels to that firewall, PPTP tunnels to that firewall. You've got complete configuration
of port forwarding, right?
Correct. Definitely some port forwarding. There was a question about multiple IP addresses. We tend to assign one IP address per server. You can do that. But in a disaster recovery situation, you may be able to do some simple port forwarding to get your ports open. Once you spin up your servers, configure your firewall appropriately, then you're ready to go. You may have a site where multiple employees are gathered together, for simplicity. Maybe you have a sonic wall or another firewall that can do IPsec. That can connect directly to the virtual firewall. And so there's no configuration really required on each workstation. What we will normally do or recommend is, obviously, this information is up in the cloud. and is not sitting on a local area network. So users, will have our clients connect via remote desktop Citrix, so they're sitting next to all the information and data, and things work well. But that can move through the VPN, or you have the flexibility to use a PPTP VPN, easy for me to say, or even if you feel comfortable with it, we don't recommend it, but simply open up remote desktop, Citrix, to those servers and have them remote desktop directly in. So that's kind of the high-end overview on that.
Yeah, and Ken, can you kind of talk about the kind of speed experience you had with downloading the actual server images of the tests you went through?
Without a doubt. And there is an actual decryption process that goes on, as well as a download of all that information to the Continuity Cloud server. From basic testing, and we're continuing to bang away at this, so we feel comfortable that we really need to copy. And everybody knows, clients, as far as data storage needs, are through the roof, absolutely through the roof. So it won't be. It's not surprising where we have clients with a terabyte or multi-terabytes of data, on their servers that need to be recovered. From testing, and like I said, we're continuing to bang away and find out exactly what our speeds look like. Averages about, I would say, 140 to 180 as far as gigabytes per hour, and that's really downloading and decrypting the server information in Shadow Protect to this server, so then you can virtualize it. And if you guys have used Virtual Boot and VirtualBox, and initially I was very skeptical. I'm used to, your Zen server and your, quote, higher-end virtualization products. I've been pleasantly surprised. And, the Virtual Boot and VirtualBox technology, which allows you to take a Shadow Protect image and really Virtual Boot kind of converts that and gets that ready and then passes it to VirtualBox, which actually virtualizes it, works really pretty darn well, and performance is good. So we've been happy with that. So you don't need to go from Shadow Protect to Hyper-V. That it would be an option, but Virtual Boot and VirtualBox are very quick to bring these servers up once you've downloaded them.
All right. So from a purely practical perspective, the way we're recommending partners kind of position your capabilities from a Continuity Cloud perspective is you really want to commit to clients, that you would be able to, in an emergency, within 24 hours, have their servers back up and running in the cloud. And so, if you have 600 gigabytes of data to restore, it's going to take 3 to 4 hours for those images to be downloaded from the eFolder storage cloud into your Continuity Cloud node. So, there is a practical limitation to the bandwidth and capacity to get those downloaded, so you have to plan for that. But again, this is an importance of testing and trying this out. But as the folks at NetFusion saw, anywhere between 140 to 180 gigabytes per hour to move the data from the storage cloud to the Continuity Cloud.
Correct.
By the way, one of the competitors, to remain nameless, can only do it at 50 gigs an hour. So big difference. eFolder's really invested on the back end and really high end in their data center.
And what you can do, don't think it's going to be a process where you're going to, start the download of those servers and sit there for 6 hours. You start the download of maybe 1, 2, 3 servers, and then as soon as that first server is downloaded, start to virtualize it. So you can stay busy throughout the entire process rather than, everything has to download before I can even start my virtualizations.
Okay, a couple questions that have come up. Joe asked it, and one other person I think asked it. But what kind of internet access bandwidth do you recommend to clients, just in general? So this is Dave. This is kind of more of just an overall question of what you recommend to clients for business class connectivity, which is very relevant before and after a disaster. But what do you kind of recommend to clients?
Well, I'll tell you what I tell people, and then we'll ask Ken if he says the same thing. We always recommend. This is typical with me. You ask me a question, and I'm going to make it more complicated. It's not just based on bandwidth. It's based on a combination of SLA and bandwidth. The reason I say that, you can get everybody knows you can get UVerse or something like that at your home. They offer in some offices now, and you can get a really fast speed, but there's no SLA on it. You don't matter to them. If the internet goes down, they don't care. They're going to get out there when they get out there, and it may be a day. It could be, I've literally seen it with clients that were cheap, that wanted a cheap connection. I've seen it take, a week or longer. And to us, it's important to have, there is a difference. If you see a price difference on bandwidth, the lower bandwidth costs more than the other one. There's a reason why. It's the SLA usually. And the SLA is a service level agreement, and that means how long do they have to respond, and then also how long do they have to respond to get out there and get it fixed. So we recommend the following with all clients. We recommend that they have at least their primary source for bandwidth is usually a T1 or business Ethernet. Both of them usually have 4, sometimes worst case 8-hour SLAs, but most of them are 4 hours from major providers. And then we also always recommend that a company has a backup internet line. Our company, we choose to implement sonic walls, and we do the failover option in there. And then, but on the backup connection, it can be the cheap connection. It can be the DSL or something like that costs less, or the inexpensive UVerse connection, et cetera. So we want at least a 1.5 megabits per second pipe up and down, okay, for the primary connection, but with a great SLA. And then on the backup connection, it could be something lower, okay? And so we're not really as concerned about that. You definitely want symmetrical speeds nowadays on your bandwidth so that you can send everything off-site nightly without getting your backups, taking too long to offload at night and then interfering with your bandwidth for the users during the daytime. Kent, did you want to add something to that?
No, and that's a valid point that Dave brought up. Do remember that you are moving this data, throughout the day possibly, and during the evening, up to the continuity cloud, and that you do want sufficient bandwidth to move that up. Yeah, but no, I agree with you, Dave, what you said.
Well, you're actually, you're moving it to the storage cloud, but when you use the continuity cloud, you would also want to make sure you have decent bandwidth to get up there, but that's going to be based on where your users are going to be located, et cetera, in the time of a disaster. But we really stress the SLA, not just bandwidth speed.
Okay, great. Just a couple really practical questions. A couple of people asked about the slide deck and getting the presentation on demand. Everybody who attended today's presentation will receive access to the slide deck in PowerPoint format, and you will also all be sent recorded versions of the webinar itself, and then we're taking a recorded version of all of the webinars we do, and we put them on the eFolder YouTube page in addition. So let's see here. So Steve wants to know about performance from a desktop computer through a VPN tunnel on the WAN compared to the LAN. Speeds can be very different, especially with very large database or CAD files. So this is kind of a technical question. RDP to a server in the cloud would solve that problem, but the client may not have that set up. Can you discuss these issues? So I guess
can I go?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Let me add something first, and then I'll let Kent discuss it. But part of that's disaster. One of the things that we offer in our service, you were asking what's included in our service. We include a business technology advising on a regular basis. So one of the things that we would talk about during our disaster recovery planning, and we would work with our clients on disaster recovery planning, is how are you going to connect to the cloud in the event of a disaster? And what do you have running that's in the cloud? If you've got just files or an Exchange server, you could be great with it with low bandwidth, like going to a connection without having RDP or without having Citrix, et cetera. Okay? If you've got a situation where you've got, a really intensive, like possibly client-server app with a database, and it needs a lot of bandwidth to talk to the server, then yeah, it's going to be slow. Unless you then, ahead of time, if that's the case, you could generate another project for yourself, and that, you generate, let's go ahead, also have a terminal server set up locally that we also back up to the cloud, and then that terminal server or Citrix server, whatever your preference, could be used so that clients can log into that, and then everything's operating at that end, and you're only passing screenshots and mouse movements, keyboard movements, etc. So that's a possible project for you if your client was really concerned about how that would affect them, and they during an extended disaster. I will say a lot of clients would be happy just to be able to get to their, even though it would be slow, they'd still be happy to be able to operate. And some clients won't want to spend the money for that extra prep with the terminal server, et cetera, and I think some would. So technically, Kent, what would you want to add to that I didn't already beat to a pulp?
No, and that's one of the things you determine with the client, what, during a disaster, what needs to be operational. And, I mean, none of us expect, if you've got a heavy database, if you've got that to work well, through a low bandwidth connection or a VPN connection. I mean, that won't work normally really well, and it won't work during a disaster really well. If they're simply accessing files and maybe Exchange through cached mode, not a problem. But really, and just like Dave said, that is a project. That is something you could advise the client on. How, and if you could implement a terminal server and that's ready to go with profile set up and ready, so when you virtualize that in the cloud, you already have your profile set up, you are ready to go. And so you're really doing all of that plan. Business continuity is about all the planning and the testing beforehand, advise your clients, and they can determine, what they want up in the event of a disaster. But, if you're doing some heavy lifting, heavy databases, terminal services, remote desktop is the way, or Citrix is the way to go.
Yeah, and without it, it's going to be slow. But it would be slow to anyone's cloud solution without that.
Yeah.
Okay, a couple really practical questions. Daniel asks, how do we get signed up? And so that's kind of a vague question, but I'll try to answer it. So first of all, to access the Continuity Cloud, you need to be an eFolder partner. And naturally, partners that are using either eFolder BDR or eFolder Aperture Cloud will be the ones that will have the most ready application in use for the Continuity Cloud. There's a lot of different things you can do with it, but the main thing is virtualizing server images that have been backed up to the eFolder Continuity Cloud. If you're not yet an eFolder partner, you can do so. You can join. You can figure out how to join and by going to eFolder.net/join, and a sales representative will reach out to you and walk you through the process of getting signed up as an eFolder partner. Anybody who is an eFolder partner, and if you're already deploying, eFolder BDR or eFolder Aperture Cloud, this offering is available to you. Now, the important thing to note is we have not publicly announced the general availability of the Continuity Cloud. This is kind of a pre-release educational webinar for our partner base, but literally we are days away from the announcement of the public availability of the Continuity Cloud. And the way to request the provisioning of a Continuity Cloud node will be you simply go to the support page on the portal and you request a provisioning of the cloud for your organization. So I do want to clarify. So that's how to get started with eFolder and who the Continuity Cloud will be available to. But I do want to back up really quickly and just clarify one pricing matter which came up earlier. So just a quick clarification around BDR pricing. Dave mentioned that one of the advantages of eFolder is, each BDR location includes 150 gigabytes of offsite storage, and then that storage can be pooled across all of your clients. That is correct if you are an eFolder Platinum partner. NetFusion happens to be an eFolder Platinum partner. And so that's the reality. So if you have 10 clients and then you have one BDR at each location, the entire storage pool that's allocated for your organization would be 150 times 10. And that would be for your whole organization, which allows you to balance, the small clients with the large clients in terms of the amount of data they're sending to the offsite environment. If you're signed up as a eFolder Gold partner, however, it's 150 gigabytes per location, right? So at any time, any partner can upgrade their partner status from Gold to Platinum for a fee. That's always available to eFolder Gold partners, but I just wanted to make sure that there wasn't any confusion about that particular pricing point.
I would highly recommend then, this is a business owner speaking, obviously I'd forgotten about that, but I did look at it when I first signed up. It's been a long time ago, but that's an important difference. And paying an upfront fee once I believe it's just a one-time fee difference, right? Isn't it, Ted?
Yeah, it's $500. It's $500
Okay.
difference. Yeah.
That is nothing compared to the benefits of having your storage pooled among all your sites. That's going to save you a lot of money every single day, every single month.
All right. Okay, and then I think the kind of a follow-on question, let me just kind of fast forward here. I think I can actually go to the slide like this, go to the appendix. So one of the, Dave talked about how NetFusion bundles their BDR, BDR service offering into their overall managed service package, right? And it's not really a negotiable item or a line item anymore for them. That's one way to do it, and we talked at length, I think, about all the good reasons to do that. But just some other examples of what other eFolder partners are doing where business continuity or a BDR service offering is an electable thing for the client. There's kind of two different ways we see partners pricing these things in the market today. So one partner that's been very successful, they have a very simple model. They take their wholesale costs from eFolder for a particular client install, and they triple them to come up with the retail pricing. Because what they want to achieve on a monthly recurring basis is they want to achieve anywhere between 60 to 66%, recurring gross margins on a monthly basis. So they just take the wholesale cost from eFolder. So in the case of, say, a small business client that has one server, 100 gigabytes of storage, sending to offsite, your wholesale cost to eFolder is going to be $60 a month. What they simply do is they turn around and charge a retail price of $180 a month to that client, which gets them 66% recurring gross margins. So that's one way to do it, okay? That's a very simple way of doing it, but a very valid way of doing it. The other model I'll share with you is a little more sophisticated, but it basically says, okay, we're going to come up with a discrete rate card that is based upon the number of servers and the amount of included offsite storage per client. And so the way this particular partner packages things is they have, if you have one server and that package includes 125 gigabytes of offsite storage, they charge $300 per month. And then, so on and so forth, up the chain, 250, 3, 500. And the one caveat I will make on this particular bundled model is what this partner has chosen to do is they actually only charge a $750 upfront setup fee. And then what they're doing is their retail pricing on a monthly recurring basis is a little higher than you might normally see, but they're recapturing some of the upfront hardware costs that they've internalized into their business model to kind of recapture the cost of the appliance. So, the great thing about managed service pricing is there's 1,000 ways to slice and dice it. I think partners sometimes are frustrated by that, but I think you view it as an opportunity. But there's a couple different ways to do it. You can incorporate business continuity into your overall managed service package like NetFusion does. You can have it as a discrete offering with a kind of a markup model, or you can come up with your own bundles and packages that include the appliance or don't include the appliance. It's really up to you. So hopefully that answers some questions about pricing and packaging. Let me go back to the Q&A log. I guess, Dave, do you have any reactions to kind of those two different models?
We're probably closer to the bundle model. We actually do recapture. We do not sell the client the appliance. We own it. If you cancel service with us, we go and pick it up. So we are recapturing the cost. I build my pricing on basically a 3-year, getting my money back in either 2 years or 3 years, depending on the length of the contract with the client. And then we also do include X amount of storage. We haven't done it based on X number of servers, so I like that idea. So I learned something also. And then we sometimes have charged the setup fee and sometimes haven't. I actually like the idea of charging that amount of a setup fee because it seems pretty small, and it's just a setup fee. They're not buying the appliance. Basically, that covers your labor with a markup to go out and set everything up, and it also maybe offsets your upfront cost a little bit.
Okay, well, let's see here. There's a few more questions to answer, but I think we're just about out of time. I want to thank Dave and Kent from NetFusion for joining us for today's eFolder Expert Series webinar, and thank all of the partners who have joined us. If we didn't address your question live on today's webinar, we will follow up with you directly. And as I mentioned, look for a recording of this session in your email box in the next couple hours or days, and on the eFolder YouTube channel. Thank you to all of the eFolder partners who have joined us today, and Dave and Kent, thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, take care, everybody. Thank you very much.